Hey guys, so I wasn't expecting to be out on Thursday, but I have some stuff going on at home. Air conditioner's out, dog passed away, lots of stuff going on, so I have to take the day off. I wanted to record these notes for you so that you have them to watch and hopefully it'll help you. Keep in mind that you can pause the notes anytime, pause it, write something down, and then hit play again, just like you would any other video. All right, so these notes today are about simplifying expressions, and this correlates with your assignment number 7, okay? So, grab your own notes real quick, hold on, sorry. First of all, let's talk about what a term is. What is a term? Okay, there are 3 different types of terms. You could have a term that is just a number, like if you had the term 5. You could have a term that is just a letter, like the term V, or you could have a combo of the 2, a number and a letter, like if you had 6Y, okay? So all 3 of these are examples of terms. Now, if you have a number only, like this 5, a better name for this, instead of just calling it a number, is calling it a constant. Just like in science class, if you're doing an experiment, something that doesn't change is a constant. So this 5 is never going to change no matter what we do with the rest of the equation. Then if you only have a letter, we don't call them letters in math, we call them variables. And again, just like in science class, when you do an experiment, you have variables. So you have constants and variables. Same thing with this. And then when you have a combination of the 2, you have a number and a letter. The letter is still called a variable. However, the number is not called a constant anymore, because the number, the value of this term, is going to change depending on what we say the variable is. So the 6 is called a coefficient. Okay, so once again, a number would just be a constant, a letter would be called a variable, and a combination of a number and a letter would be, the variable would still be called a variable, but this number is called a coefficient. It's very important whenever you're using letters in algebra that variables are always lowercase. Variables are always lowercase. Sometimes you see capital letters, uppercase letters in math class, but that's usually when you're talking about finding the area of something. You could use a capital A. Finding the perimeter, you could use a capital P. Volume, capital V. But that's just to abbreviate something. If we're talking about variables, we're talking about lowercase letters, and you can use any letter in the alphabet, A through Z. Now you'll find me using some of the same letters over and over again. I usually do that because they usually don't get confused with the numbers. Like a B, a lowercase b, sometimes looks like a 6. So I don't like using B and some other ones too. But anyway, all right, moving on. So let's now talk about how you can combine like terms. So you can add or subtract coefficients. Remember, the coefficients are the numbers in front of variables. You can add or subtract coefficients if they have the same variable. So you can add or subtract coefficients if they have the same variable. That's called combining like terms. So for instance, if I had the example of 5m plus 3m minus 4m. This is made up of 3 separate terms. Terms are always separated by plus and minus signs. So we have 1 term, 2 terms, 3 terms, okay? 3 separate terms. And each one of these terms has an m in it, and then it has your coefficient. So when you're combining your like terms, what you're really doing here is you're just going to add and subtract these 3 coefficients. So 5 plus 3 minus 4. Well, 5 plus 3 is 8. 8 minus 4 equals 4. So our new coefficient is a 4, and then we just keep our variable. And there is our simplified answer. So we took this expression that has 3 terms, and we rewrote it as an expression that only has 1 term, which is obviously much simpler. Let's look at another one. Let's say that we have the expression 7r minus 10r plus 2r. Okay, so they all have an r, which is great. Okay, that means they're all like terms, and we're going to focus on the coefficients. So we have a 7. Now this minus sign is important. This is a minus 10 and then plus 2. So the regular classes, the regular 7th grade classes, they're not doing negatives yet, but you guys, you're in advanced, you are, okay? So we're going to work this straight across from left to right. 7 minus 10 is negative 3, and then 3 plus 2 is negative 1. So your coefficient is going to be a negative 1r. Now there's actually another way that you can write this. If your coefficient is a 1, you really don't even write this. So what this means is just a negative r. That is the best way to write it, okay? Again, if your coefficient is a 1, you do not show the 1 right there. But notice the negative sign did not go away, all right? I'm going to know that that's a negative 1. That's kind of like an imaginary 1. Let me have you do some that have some constants in them as well, okay? So this is 6w plus 4 minus 14w minus 3 plus 2. This might be a good spot to pause the video, write the expression down, you try it, and then restart the video, okay? So if I'm going to focus on my terms, I have 5 terms here. Remember, they're separated by the plus and minus signs. And I only see 2 terms that actually have a w. So I'm always going to start with the term that has the variable. So that's very important. Always start with term that has a variable. Okay, so I know it's listed first, but it just kind of works out that it's listed first. If it wasn't listed first, I would still want to start out with whatever term had the variable first. Okay, I don't want to write a term that doesn't have a variable first. So 6 minus 14 would be a negative 8w. What I'm left with then are these constants, these numbers that don't have variables. 4, negative 3, plus 2. Now, because of the commutative property, which we've talked about, because of the commutative property, you can add these numbers. You can combine these numbers in any order that you want to. So I think if I was doing this, I would combine my 4 and my 2 and get 6, and then do 6 minus 3 is 3. You might just want to work your way straight across. 4 minus 3 is 1. 1 plus 2 is 3. Either way, you get the same answer of a positive 3. So very important that we're going to have this positive or possibly negative sign in some of these answer, separating this number from this variable, okay? And this is the answer that we're looking for here. So sometimes people get confused and they think that we're solving something. We're not solving for w. We don't want to know what w is yet. When we start solving equations, then we'll figure out what w is. Right now, all we're doing is simplifying. So if you have terms that have variables and you have terms that don't have variables, the constants, that means that your answers are going to have 2 separate terms, just like this answer here, okay? Let's do another one. Let's say we have 17y minus 20y plus 6 minus 3y. So we have 4 terms right here. I'm going to start with my terms that have the variable. 17y minus 20y minus 3y. Notice when I circle these that I'm including the plus or minus sign that's in front of the number. So that minus sign has to be with the 3. That minus sign there has to be with your 20. That's important. So now my coefficients here are 17 minus 20 minus 3. So 17 minus 20, that's negative 3. And then negative 3 minus 3, that's going to give me a negative 6. So my first term is going to be a negative 6y. Now I'm going to look at my constants. I only have one constant, so that means I don't have to combine anything with it. I can just bring it straight down into my answer, plus 6. And we are finished. That is it right there. Okay? How about if we have 13r plus r minus 7 minus 2r plus 2. Okay? So I'm going to start looking for my terms with my variables. 13r plus r minus 2r. Okay, keep those plus and minus signs with the number. Okay, remember before we start combining these that this plus r, that's like saying a plus 1r. So we have a 13, we have a plus 1, and we have a minus 2. 13 plus 1 is 14. 14 minus 2 is 12. So my first term is 12r. Now I'm going to look at my constants. Negative 7 plus 2. Negative 7 plus 2 is a negative 5. And you are finished. You are finished with that. Okay. Let's see. Sometimes to simplify, you're going to have to first distribute, and then you're going to have to go through this process of combining like terms. So let's practice some of those. Let's say we have 6 parentheses 3m plus 2 plus 7m minus 4. Okay, hopefully you noticed first thing that there are parentheses in this problem. Your brain is already kind of trained to think, oh, parentheses first. That's going to help you. That's based on order of operations. Now we can't do what's inside of the parentheses because we can't do 3m plus 2. But what we can do is we can distribute, just like we did the other day in class. Okay, we practiced distributing. So again, the first thing that I want to do is do 6 times 3m, which is 18m. And I want to do 6 times 2, which is 12. And then I haven't done anything to this over here. So this is just going to get dropped down, plus 7m minus 4. Okay? So it's kind of like when we were doing the order of operation problems where you bring down the things that you haven't used yet. So now I want to combine my like terms. I have an 18m. I have a 7m. 18 plus 7. That's going to give me 25m. And then looking at my constants, 12 minus 4, that's going to give me a positive 8. And there's my answer. I am finished. So again, you want to distribute first, and then you combine like terms. Let's do another one that is going to have some negatives in it, okay? Let's practice some negatives. Let's say we have 8 parentheses, 4v minus 6 plus 5 minus 10v plus 12. So concentrate first on your parentheses, what's inside the parentheses, and the number that's directly outside the parentheses. The plus 5, that 5 is being separated by that plus sign. So we definitely know that we want to distribute the 8 and not the 5 because the 8's not being separated by anything. So let's multiply by this 8. 8 times 4v is 32v. 8 times a negative 6. Think about that as being a negative 6. That's going to help you guys. 8 times negative 6 is a negative 48. And nothing else we're doing anything with yet. So plus 5 minus 10v plus 12. Okay, now it's time to combine like terms. So I have a 32v. I have a negative 10v. Those are my only 2 terms that have variables. So 32 minus 10, that's going to give me 22v. Now I am going to combine my constants. I have 3 constants here. A negative 48 plus 5, and then plus 12. So negative 48 plus 5, that's going to give me negative 43. And then negative 43 plus 12. That's going to be a harder problem to just do mentally. I'm not saying that you can't. But remember our rules for these. If we're adding integers with different signs subtract. Take the sign with a higher number, then we'll be exact. So a negative 31 would be the correct way to solve negative 48 plus 5 plus a 12. There it is. What's going to happen if you need to distribute and you have a negative number? Let's say you have a negative 5 on the outside. If I have a negative 5 on the outside, that means I need to distribute not just a 5, but the whole negative 5, okay? So when I multiply negative 5 times a positive 2, that's going to give me a negative 10r. And then a negative 5 times a positive 7 is going to give me a negative 35. So again, different signs when you're multiplying, the answer is negative no matter what. So a negative 5 times 2r is a negative 10r. Negative 5 times positive 7 is a negative 35. I haven't done anything with my plus 8r, so I'm bringing it down. And now I'm ready to combine like terms. We have a negative 10r and a positive 8r. Negative 10 plus 8 is negative 2r. And then we have our negative 35. Nothing to combine with that, so I'm bringing it straight down into my answer. And I am finished. Let's look at this next one. Trying to give you lots of examples, okay? Let's say we have 3k minus 8, parentheses 2k plus 3. So in this one, it might be a little confusing for people because the distributive property part of the expression is not listed first. Your highlighter, you could use a highlighter, it might help you. So here we have what's inside the parentheses, obviously, and the 8 is right outside, but this is very important. That minus sign has to go with your 8. That minus sign has to go with your 8. So what we're really distributing here is a negative 8. We are distributing a negative 8. Negative 8 times a positive 2k would be a negative 16k. So again, negative 8 times 2 is negative 16. And then negative 8 times a positive 3. Negative 8 times positive 3 is a negative 24. I haven't done anything with this 3k, so I'm bringing it down. Now it's time to combine like terms. 3k, negative 16k, 3 minus 16 is a negative 13k, and there's nothing to combine with my negative 24, so I'm just bringing it straight down into my answer. There it is. Bam. You can also just distribute, instead of distributing a negative 8, you may sometimes have to distribute with just a negative sign. Let's show one of those. Let's say we have a negative, parentheses, 6a minus 7 plus 10. Okay, I'm not making these expressions really long because that's not the important part here. The important part is learning how to distribute that negative sign. So whenever you see just a negative sign that you have to distribute, I want you to think about that negative sign out there as being a negative 1. It's going to make it easier for you to think about your multiplying. So again, think about this as just being a negative 1 times 6a, which is just a negative 6a, and a negative 1 times a negative 7, negative 1 times negative 7, two negatives make a positive 7. So really, this negative sign, when you distribute it, it does the opposite sign of what you started with. We started with a positive 6a, now it's a negative 6a. Started with a negative 7, now it's a positive 7. And then we have this plus 10. Our first term has to be with the variable. There's nothing to combine with it, so negative 6a. And then our two constants, 7 plus 10, that's going to give you a plus 17. And you're finished. All right, so That's a lot that we've talked about. Let's talk about a couple reminders. I'm going to say this is a yes way to do it, and this is a no way to do it, okay? A yes and a no, because I don't want you to mess up when you're putting your answer in the Google form. And I know that I won't be here when you're doing your assignment, so you may have questions, and again, I don't want you to mess up. So as a reminder, lowercase letters only. Lowercase only. So if you have the letter R, then you need to have it as a lowercase r. Do not write any of your variables as uppercase, capital letters, okay? The other reminder is you need to write your variable term first. Meaning, if your answer is 5r plus 2, the term with the variable 5r has to be written first. Do not, this is a no, do not write 2 plus 5r. That is not the proper way to write an expression. And then lastly, so we'll kind of break this up a little bit. Lastly, and this has more to do with putting your answer in the Google form, no spaces. So again, if we have the same 5r plus 2, do not hit your space bar between the r and the plus and the 2. So do not be like 5r space plus space 2. You don't want spaces. Just put it all in one thing, whether there's minus signs or plus signs, all in one thing, no spaces, and you should be fine. If you have questions, email me. I will have access to my email, so I can definitely help you with that. And if you aren't even sure what your question is or how to word it, you can always just wait until you see me again on Monday is when you'll see me. So I hope you have a good day, and I'm sorry I'm not here for you for this class, but hopefully these notes will get you through. Remember, pause it, play it, rewatch it, look at the PDF, ask your friends, email me, or just wait till Monday. Have a good day.